September 1944. Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force, Versailles, France. General Dwight Eisenhower sat behind his desk, his jaw set, fingers tapping a rhythm on a folder, holding the newest intelligence concerning George Patton's defiance. Outside his private quarters, staff officers conversed in hushed tones. It was common knowledge what was imminent. Patton was being summoned. And when Patton was called in like this, careers concluded. What Eisenhower declared within that chamber would either preserve or shatter the reputation of America's most exceptional battlefield commander since the Civil War. To grasp the gravity of that juncture, however, one must understand the circumstances that brought both men to that precipice. Before we delve further, please click the subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments section. What is your perspective on Patton? A military prodigy or a detriment? We eagerly await insights from history enthusiasts globally. Let us cast our minds back to August 1944, mere weeks prior to that charged encounter. Patton's Third Army had just accomplished one of the most astonishing advances in military annals. Having broken free from Normandy, his divisions had surged across France, covering more than 400 miles in under a month. They liberated numerous towns, apprehended over 65,000 German captives, and were poised to thrust directly into the heartland of Germany. Patton was convinced, absolutely convinced, that he could bring the conflict to a close before Christmas. His forces possessed momentum. The Germans were in disarray. The weather remained favorable. All he required was fuel, munitions, and authorization to press onward. But that is not what transpired. Instead, on August 28th, Eisenhower rendered a decision that would plague their association for months. He commanded Patton to cease his offensive. The rationale? British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery had persuaded Allied High Command that his forces should take precedence for resupply. Montgomery intended to initiate Operation Market Garden, a daring push through Holland aimed at breaching the Rhine and concluding the war from the north. Patton was incandescent with rage. He viewed it as political maneuvering, granting the British an opportunity to claim victory after American units had borne the brunt of the advance across France. In his personal journal that evening, Patton inscribed words that would later be used against him. Words that implied Eisenhower was indecisive, politically compromised, and more concerned with appeasing the British than securing triumph in the war. Yet Patton did not confine these sentiments to his diary. He voiced them openly to staff officers, to fellow commanders, to anyone who would lend an ear. Colonel Charles Codman, one of Patton's aides, later recounted the atmosphere at Third Army headquarters in late August. The general was beside himself. He would pace incessantly, lamenting how they were allowing the Germans to reinforce their defenses, how each moment of delay strengthened the enemy. And he made his animosity abundantly clear, assigning blame directly to Eisenhower. These pronouncements inevitably reached Supreme Headquarters. They always did. Within the close-knit circle of senior command, secrets were non-existent. Staff officers communicated. Liaison officers reported. Within days, Eisenhower was fully apprised of Patton's discourse regarding him. General Omar Bradley, who commanded the 12th Army Group and served as Patton's direct superior, attempted to mediate. Bradley contacted Patton on September 2nd. The exchange, according to Bradley's post-war memoirs, was fraught with tension. "George, you must cease speaking of Ike in that manner. Word is getting around. It undermines his authority." Patton's reply was one of defiance. "Brad, I am articulating the sentiments of every commander in this theater. We are affording the British an opportunity to play the hero while we remain idle. It is strategically unsound and professionally unacceptable. It matters not if you are correct, Bradley retorted. You do not have the prerogative to publicly challenge the Supreme Commander's decisions. That constitutes insubordination, and Ike will not tolerate it indefinitely. Then perhaps he should relieve me, for I will not feign agreement with decisions that are costing us the war. Bradley terminated the call, recognizing his inability to sway his old comrade, and he anticipated what would follow. At headquarters, Eisenhower was contending with pressures from all sides. Churchill advocated for supporting Montgomery's operations. Roosevelt desired American forces to receive credit for ending the war. The combined chiefs of staff demanded accelerated progress. And now, his most audacious field commander was openly questioning his leadership. Captain Harry Butcher, Eisenhower's naval aide, meticulously maintained diaries throughout the war. His entry for September 5th is particularly illuminating. Ike is more incensed than I have witnessed him in months. Not an outward explosion, but a chilling anger. He repeatedly states, "I cannot permit a three-star general to undermine Allied unity." He is contemplating relieving Patton. I believe his resolve is firm this time. Eisenhower had previously shielded Patton following the soldier-slapping incident in Sicily, where Patton had physically assaulted 2 hospitalized soldiers suffering from combat fatigue. Eisenhower had protected him from ignominious dismissal. He had acknowledged that Patton, despite his numerous shortcomings, was indispensable on the battlefield. However, this situation was fundamentally different. This was not a momentary lapse of temper. This was deliberate insubordination. This was a subordinate commander actively working against the Supreme Commander's strategic objectives. On September 7th, Eisenhower made his definitive decision. He dispatched a directive to Third Army headquarters. General Patton will report to Chef Headquarters on September 10th at 1400 hours. Personal meeting with Supreme Commander. Attendance is mandatory. Upon receipt of the message, Patton's staff fell into a profound silence. Major General Hobart Gay, Patton's chief of staff, later recounted that the room resembled a mausoleum. Everyone understood the implications of such a summons. Patton himself appeared almost resigned, perhaps even relieved. He remarked to Gay, "Well, Hap, I've finally done it. I've talked myself out of a job, but I'll be damned if I will apologize for desiring to win this war through the correct means." The night preceding the meeting, Patton penned a letter to his wife, Beatrice. The letter, now housed in the Library of Congress archives, is remarkable for its candor. "I may be returning home soon, darling. I have offended Ike one too many times. A part of me feels I should have maintained silence, but another part recognizes that remaining quiet when witnessing errors is a distinct form of failure. I have always been a fighter. I know no other way." September 10th dawned. Patton journeyed to Versailles in his staff car, his aide, Colonel Codman, by his side. Codman later described Patton's demeanor as composed, almost fatalistic. The man capable of theatrical pronouncements and bombastic displays was now quiet, collected, prepared to face whatever the outcome might be. At Chef Headquarters, the atmosphere was palpably tense. Officers who observed Patton's arrival later reported that he was attired in full-dress uniform, every decoration impeccably placed, his boots gleaming. Whatever was to transpire, he was prepared to confront it, presenting the image of a soldier. Eisenhower's secretary escorted Patton into the office precisely at 2 o'clock. She then closed the door, and for the subsequent 45 minutes, only the two men knew the substance of their discussion. However, we are not entirely without insight, as fragments of the conversation have emerged over the years. Eisenhower discussed the meeting with his Chief of Staff, General Walter Bedell Smith. Patton recorded his thoughts in his diary, and years later, both men granted interviews that shed light on the events that transpired behind that closed door. What we know is this: Eisenhower wasted no time with pleasantries. According to Patton's diary entry that evening, Ike addressed the matter directly. "George, I will be candid. You have been critical of my decisions. You have questioned my strategy. You have undermined the Allied command structure, and you have done so repeatedly, despite warnings. I wish to understand why." Patton reportedly stood at attention throughout this initial barrage. He then responded with something Eisenhower had not anticipated. "You are correct, sir. I have been critical. I have questioned your decisions, and I stand by every word I have uttered, because I believe you are making a strategic error." The room fell silent. Most officers facing a career-ending confrontation would have retreated, apologized, claimed misunderstanding. Patton doubled down. According to General Bedell Smith, to whom Eisenhower spoke immediately after the meeting, this was when Ike's anger reached its zenith. Yet it was the controlled anger of a supreme commander, not the impulsive fury of a peer. "Let me be unequivocally clear," Eisenhower stated. "I do not object to your disagreement with my strategy. I encourage debate among my commanders. What I will not countenance is a subordinate who publicizes those disagreements, who contaminates the discourse, who renders it impossible for me to maintain unified command." Do you comprehend the distinction? Patton, according to his diary, sensed a shift in that moment because Eisenhower was not angered by Patton's disagreement itself. He was angered by the manner in which Patton had expressed that disagreement. "I understand the distinction, sir," Patton replied, "and you are correct. There is a difference between professional dissent and insubordination. I have crossed that line." But then Patton uttered words that would define the remainder of their conversation. Words that would test whether Eisenhower was the leader everyone believed him to be. "General Eisenhower, if you believe I am detrimental to this command, if you feel I am damaging Allied unity, then relieve me now. I will surrender my stars on the spot and return home. No appeals, no complaints, no theatrics. Simply give the order, and I am finished." According to all accounts available to us, it was at this point that time seemed to halt. Eisenhower stared at Patton. Patton remained at attention, awaiting the decisive blow. What Eisenhower said next would determine not only Patton's fate, but the trajectory of the war itself. For to lose Patton meant forfeiting the most aggressive, most capable offensive commander in the European theater. Yet to retain him meant accepting a subordinate who had demonstrated an inability to consistently control his tongue or his opinions. Eisenhower later informed General Marshall that he spent those silent seconds weighing every factor: Patton's brilliance, his insubordination, the mission objectives, the political landscape, the lives of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It all converged on this singular moment. Then Eisenhower spoke. His voice was quiet but resolute. "George, I will not take your stars, but I require you to understand something. I am not presiding over a debating society. I am commanding a coalition force comprised of multiple nations with disparate interests, differing priorities, and varied political pressures. My responsibility extends beyond winning battles. It encompasses preserving this alliance long enough to achieve victory in the war. Patton began to respond, but Eisenhower raised his hand. You believe I wish to impede your progress? You imagine I derive pleasure from ordering you to halt when the enemy is in disarray? I do not. You are correct that we had a significant opportunity in August. You are likely correct that we could have concluded this war more swiftly had I provided you with everything you desired. This admission that Eisenhower acknowledged Patton might have been strategically sound was astonishing. Patton had not anticipated it. According to his diary, it was at this juncture that Eisenhower recognized Patton was not the politically pliable figure he had envisioned. Eisenhower continued, "But this is what you do not perceive from your headquarters. I have visibility of the supply situation across the entire front. I am aware of the political pressures emanating from London and Washington. I observe Montgomery's forces and their capabilities or limitations. I grasp the broader strategic picture, George, and at times the larger context necessitates decisions that may not appear rational from your vantage point." Then Eisenhower's tone shifted, becoming more personal, more human. "You are the finest offensive commander I possess. Arguably, the finest offensive commander anyone has. When the need arises to breach a German position, your name is the first I consider. However, I require more than battlefield prowess. I need loyalty. I need trust. I need the assurance that when I issue an order, even one you may disagree with, you will execute it without undermining my authority." Patton, according to General Bedell Smith's recollection of Eisenhower's account, offered the most sincere statement of his career. "Sir, I have served as a soldier for 35 years. I have been under the command of dozens of leaders, some exceptional, some average, some demonstrably incompetent. And I have invariably held opinions regarding their decisions. But you are right. There is a distinction between holding opinions and articulating them as I have. That was an error. Not because my strategic assessment was flawed, but because my conduct was insubordinate and unprofessional." Then Patton said something that Eisenhower would cherish for the remainder of his life. "I wish to remain, sir. I desire to command the Third Army. I want to advance into Germany and conclude this war. However, I wish to do so as a member of your team, adhering to your strategy, supporting your command, if you will have me." The silence extended once more. Then Eisenhower nodded slowly. "George, I will propose a compromise. You will cease public criticism. You will refrain from questioning my decisions with other officers. You will bring your concerns directly to me in private, and I will listen. I will give your input due consideration. However, once a decision is rendered, you will implement it without reservation. Can you commit to this?" "Yes, sir, I can." "One further point," Eisenhower added, his voice hardening. "This is your final opportunity. One more instance of insubordination. One more time you circumvent my authority by questioning it publicly, and your command is terminated. I will arrange your transport back to the States so swiftly your head will spin. And George, I will do so even if it compromises our victory, because command discipline is of paramount importance. Are we in agreement?" "Crystal clear, sir." Eisenhower rose from behind his desk. He walked around to where Patton stood at attention. Then he extended his hand, an unexpected gesture. "George, I require you. This army needs you, but I need the version of you that can function as part of a team. Can you provide that?" Patton clasped his hand. "You have my word, sir." "Then return to your army. We have a war to win." The meeting concluded. Patton saluted, executed an about-face, and departed. The entire confrontation had lasted less than an hour, yet it had fundamentally altered the relationship between America's supreme commander and its most controversial general. Colonel Codman, awaiting in the adjacent office, later described Patton's expression upon his emergence. He appeared as a man granted a second chance and fully aware of its significance. There was no bravado, no swagger, only a quiet resolve. During the journey back to Third Army headquarters, Patton remained silent for many miles. Finally, he turned to Codman and remarked, "Ike could have dismissed me. He should have dismissed me, but he did not. He afforded me another opportunity. I will not squander it." That evening, Patton penned what many historians regard as his most mature and self-aware diary entry. "I arrived in Versailles anticipating the forfeiture of my command. Instead, I gained a new appreciation for the concept of contributing to something greater than oneself. Eisenhower carries a burden I had not fully comprehended. He is not solely contending with the Germans. He is managing Churchill, Roosevelt, Montgomery, and a host of other competing interests. My role is to win battles. His role is to win the war. These are not synonymous." For his part, Eisenhower communicated with General Marshall 2 days later in a letter preserved in the Marshall Library archives. "I have engaged in a very candid discussion with Patton. I believe he now comprehends the established boundaries. More significantly, I am convinced of his capacity to operate within them. He remains our most effective offensive commander. I am making a calculated risk that he will direct his aggressive tendencies towards the enemy rather than towards the Allied command structure." And for 3 months, that gamble proved successful. Patton adhered to orders without public dissent. When he disagreed with directives, he conveyed his concerns directly to Eisenhower or Bradley in private. The Third Army continued its eastward advance, capturing Metz and nearing the German frontier. Then came December 1944, and the German offensive in the Ardennes. It was then that the September meeting demonstrated its profound value. For when Eisenhower convened that emergency conference in Verdun and tasked Patton with the seemingly impossible, to pivot his army 90 degrees and attack north within 3 days, Patton did not hesitate. He did not demur. He did not question. He simply stated, "Yes, sir, I will be there." The subsequent relief of Bastogne represented Patton fulfilling the pledge he had made in September. The promise to be an integral part of the team, to obey directives, to place his trust in his supreme commander. Following the war, both men reflected on that September encounter. In Eisenhower's memoirs, he wrote, "Managing Patton necessitated an understanding that his aggressive instincts, while vital on the battlefield, required careful redirection." The September confrontation was essential. It established parameters, but more importantly, it forged mutual respect. Patton never authored his memoirs. He succumbed in December 1945 to injuries sustained in an automobile accident in Germany. However, in interviews prior to his passing, he spoke of Eisenhower with genuine admiration. "Ike understood how to handle me. He did not attempt to transform me into someone I was not. He simply provided me with unambiguous boundaries that I could not transgress. And when I required it, he granted me a second chance." That is leadership. So, what lessons can be gleaned from this pivotal moment? What insights does this confrontation offer regarding leadership, accountability, and the grace of second chances. Firstly, it illustrates that exceptional leaders possess the ability to discipline without causing irreparable damage. Eisenhower could have relieved Patton. Many commanders would have done so, but he recognized that Patton's strategic value far outweighed his personal shortcomings, provided those shortcomings could be effectively managed. Secondly, it demonstrates that accountability operates in a reciprocal manner. Eisenhower held Patton accountable for his insubordination, but he also acknowledged the validity of Patton's strategic concerns. He did not dismiss Patton's perspective simply because its delivery was inappropriate. Thirdly, it proves that the most robust professional relationships can endure candid confrontation. The September meeting could have irrevocably fractured their working relationship. Instead, it solidified it by clearing the air and fostering a mutual understanding. And finally, it reminds us that true greatness often necessitates collaboration between individuals of vastly different temperaments. Eisenhower, the skilled diplomat, and Patton, the intrepid warrior, were mutually indispensable. Neither could have achieved victory in the war independently. The next time you encounter a challenging situation with someone whose capabilities you value, but whose conduct you find unacceptable, recall that chamber in Versailles. Remember two formidable men finding a pathway to collaboration despite profound differences. If this narrative resonated with you, please click the subscribe button and activate the notification bell. Share this video with anyone who appreciates authentic leadership and genuine history. And contribute your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever been compelled to offer someone a second chance? Or have you yourself been given one? These instances of confrontation and redemption carry significant weight. They serve as a reminder that even within the crucible of conflict, even when the stakes are immeasurably high, it is the human relationships that ultimately pave the way for victory. George Patton entered that office prepared to relinquish his command. He departed with a renewed mandate to safeguard an army. That profound transformation occurred because Dwight Eisenhower possessed the wisdom to discern when to be firm and when to be judicious. That is the enduring lesson of September 1944. That is what Eisenhower conveyed when Patton offered his command.